Let's be honest, the story you think you know about the Statue of Liberty, it's wrong. This isn't some happy story about a gift. No, this is a story about rejection, desperation, and a fight for survival against absolutely impossible odds. To really get it, you have to go back in time with me. Paris, 1878. And our story, well, it doesn't start with any kind of grandeur. It starts with a scene that's just bizarre, almost grotesque, something out of a nightmare, not the history books. Just try to picture this. You're taking a stroll through a park at the World's Fair, and there it is, a gigantic severed copper head just sitting on the grass. Seriously, the sculptor, this guy Bartholdi, he was so broke, so desperate for cash, he just dumped it there. He started charging tourists to climb inside the thing and have picnics inside her hollow skull. It was a circus act, a freak show, not a monument. And that right there, that tells you everything you need to know. Because the truth is, nobody wanted her. She was supposed to be this grand gift for America's 100th birthday back in 1876, but years have gone by. The French government, they wouldn't pay. The Americans, they never even asked for it. She was a broken promise, an unwanted, embarrassing gift that nobody would fund. But okay, let's just pretend for a second they found the money. There was a way bigger, almost impossible problem to solve. How in the world are you going to build a 46-meter-tall statue out of metal that's paper-thin and actually expected to survive a hurricane-force Atlantic gale? 2.4 millimeters. That is the thickness of her copper skin. It's the same as 2 pennies stacked together. 2 pennies. From an engineering standpoint, Bartholdi's vision was a complete nightmare. A statue that tall, made of something that thin, would either collapse under its own weight or just be ripped to shreds by the first big storm. Bartholdi was basically on the verge of giving up. So he turned to the one man in France who could maybe, just maybe, solve this impossible puzzle. A brilliant bridge builder named Gustave Eiffel. Yes, that Eiffel. Years before he built his famous tower. And this is where you see true genius at work. See, a rigid connection between the skeleton and the skin would have been totally fatal. So instead, Eiffel created this incredible system where the thin copper skin could, well, it could float. He designed a massive central iron pylon to act as the spine. From there, a secondary framework of trusses branches out. And then, this is the secret sauce, flexible armature bars connect that frame to the copper skin. This allows her to sway in the wind, to expand in the heat, all without tearing herself to pieces. In a very real sense, she breathes. So Eiffel's genius got her built, but her greatest challenge, her deepest humiliation, was still to come. Now we go to America, where she arrived, for all intents and purposes, homeless and completely rejected. After she was finally finished in Paris, they took her apart into 350 pieces, packed her up into 214 crates, and shipped her all the way to New York Harbor. But when she got there was literally nowhere to put her. The deal was that America would build the pedestal, but you know what? They just refused. The rich guys of the day, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, they all refused to donate a dime. They just left her off as a French waste of money. It gets worse. The governor of New York actually vetoed state funding for the project. The rejection was absolute. So for months, those 350 pieces of a future icon just sat there, in their crates, literally rotting on the docks. The whole situation got so humiliating that other cities, Boston, Philadelphia, started publicly offering to take the statue off New York's hands. They were trying to steal her. And right there, when all hope was lost, when it looked like she'd be shipped away in total shame, salvation came. And it didn't come from the government. It didn't come from the millionaires. It came from a newspaper publisher and from the working poor of America. Joseph Pulitzer, the owner of the World newspaper, launched a campaign that was nothing short of revolutionary. He used his paper to publicly shame the wealthy and, at the same time, empower the common person with one simple, powerful promise. I will print the name of every single person who donates, no matter how small the amount. And you know what? The people answered. It was called a rain of coins. Donations poured in from over 120,000 ordinary Americans. It was an absolutely astonishing grassroots movement. And this is the most important part of the whole story. The vast majority of those donations were less than $1. This was money from street cleaners, from factory workers, from little kids emptying their piggy banks. They were building her home 1 penny at a time. But even as the people's pedestal was finally rising, the assembly team was facing another hidden danger. It's a scientific principle called galvanic corrosion. Basically, if the iron skeleton so much as touched the copper skin, the salty, humid air of New York Harbor would turn the entire statue into a giant, dissolving battery. It would have literally eaten itself alive. Of course, Eiffel had thought of this. He had one last trick up his sleeve. Every single one of those flexible iron straps connecting skin to skeleton was coated in a layer of asbestos and shellac. It was a simple, low-tech layer of insulation that kept the two different metals apart, and it saved her from destroying herself from the inside out. At last, on October 28, 1886, paid for by the people and saved by pure engineering genius, she was unveiled. But she looked absolutely nothing like the statue we all know today. She wasn't green, not at all. She was a brilliant, blazing reddish-brown, the color of a brand new penny, and she was dazzling in the sun. So what on earth happened to her? What happened was a 30-year-long chemical war. The salty New York air launched an all-out assault on her copper skin through a process called oxidation. This is what created that green film we see today, a layer called a patina. But here's the critical thing to understand. This isn't damage. It's not rust. It's armor. That green coating is what protects the paper-thin copper underneath from completely corroding away. But back in the day, people didn't get it. They were horrified by the color change. In fact, in 1906, Congress actually ordered her to be painted. But the public, the very same people who had paid for her, they protested. They understood, maybe just instinctively, what was happening. She wasn't decaying. She was adapting. She was surviving. When you really think about it, her entire story is one of survival. I mean, she started as a broken head in a park. She was rejected by the rich and powerful, paid for by the poor, and then she literally had to change her own color just to endure the elements. She fought for her right to exist every single step of the way. And that, right there, reveals her true meaning. She is not a monument to a gift that was given. She's a monument to a victory that was earned, a victory won by an engineer's genius, and by the pennies of over 100,000 ordinary people who simply refused to let her fail. And maybe that is the real story of liberty.